Hi, my name is Lorraine Watry and welcome to my studio. I am a watercolor artist and I've worked with watercolor for 26 years now, and I thought I would start a new series of videos where I go over different tips, tricks, and techniques for working with watercolor. And hopefully these short videos will help you in your journey, and if you have a question or a technique that you would like to see, please comment below and I will try to accommodate that in a future video. Tip number one is to use the water in watercolor to your advantage. So I am going to draw a shape and then I will try to go around this shape, and this is if I did not have some masking fluid, because normally you could put some masking fluid in there and let it dry and then paint that shape, and you could just paint right over that whole area and you would be able to work a little faster than having to go around those shapes. So the other part of this is not only the water but also your brush. If you are trying to paint a shape and use a really small brush like this and put the color on quickly, you will have a harder time than using the biggest brush you can use for an area and still be able to control filling in that shape. So there's the shape that you're filling, the size of your brush, and I have a really small brush and then I have a number 20 brush here, and then also the water that's in your paint. So right now the paint that I pulled out is, both of these are cobalt, and this paint over here does not have very much water in it. And let me move my brush for a second. And if I tip my palette, the paint on the right is going to run, whereas the paint over here is not running because there's not very much water. Now there are different times that you might want paint that doesn't have very much water, so it's not that you shouldn't use pigment with very little water, but just for this situation it doesn't work as well. So my brush is very small, it doesn't hold as much pigment, and when I go to paint over here, I am fighting the fact that every edge that I create is starting to dry, and you're seeing even probably dry brush marks because my brush is not holding very much pigment. So if I'm working around this shape, as I'm painting this edge over here, this edge right here is starting to dry. And so in order to try to get around this shape as fast as I can, I have to keep reloading my brush, and it can take very little time. So as I'm painting here, this edge is starting to dry. So then I'll go back over here to try to get that edge going. And as I'm coming around the shape, I can already see some lines in my shape here that are being caused by the fact that I can't work fast enough to get this shape filled in before the pigment dries. And I have not added anything to my brush with the water. I'm just using this paint as I got it out onto my palette. So you can see that it is hard to get the brush or the shape filled in because I'm really having to kind of press and get the pigment moved around that shape. And I'm actually running out of pigment over on my palette there because it's so dry that I can't work fast enough. So I can't even really, I have a few more seconds here with some pigment maybe that I can pull out, but it just is really too dry to even finish the last part of the shape here. So I am going to stop using that, and I will go on to show you the other way that you can work more with the water and have the shape fill in the way you want it. So I will even make a bigger shape this time, kind of a little more random center things. And again, if I had masking fluid, I could fill those in and then paint this whole shape. But if for some reason either I don't have my masking fluid with me or I don't want to use it, then I can use this method. Now this method is working with more water in my pigment. I can still have a dark shape, but I need to have my pigment, or have my pigment have more water in it. So I pull out lots of pigment, and then I need to get enough water in there that it will basically drip off my brush. And that means that I have enough water that as I'm working around this shape, I can go with some speed, and it actually pulls and makes a wet edge that I can work with. So I'm working over here where this is very pooled, this is also pooled. So as long as this edge stays pooled with pigment, I can work around the shape and fill in my whole shape and still have a nice dark kind of crazy 8 looking shape here. And then as I come around, I'm also looking at still going with some speed. This brush, both of these brushes actually are silver black velvet brushes, and they are a mix or a blend of natural hair and synthetic hairs, and so the natural hair will hold more pigment and water than just a synthetic brush will. So depending on your brush, you may have to go back over to the paint over here and fill up your load up your brush again. But because this one holds a lot of water and pigment, I can get around this whole shape kind of quickly here and fill it in just by keeping this bead of water and pigment. And that water in there gives me more time to paint around that shape. Alright, and then the last little bit that I will do is I'm cleaning my brush just a little bit to get any extra pigment out. I will dry my brush on a paper towel so it's just damp, and then because I have my board tipped, and that helps keep that extra bead of water and paint moving down the shape. It pools down at the bottom of the shape if you have a lot of moisture in your brush at the end. So by drying my brush and having it just be what's called a thirsty brush, I can come back and just by dabbing gently, I can lift some of that pigment back off of there, and that will make the whole shape have the same value. If I left that bead of paint down there and water, eventually what might happen is it can dry darker, and also it can cause a bloom to happen because this wetter area down here would want to move back toward the drier area, and you could end up with a bloom. So I hope that was helpful, and that tip is one that is a really good one to practice and know how much water and paint your brushes can hold, and then also how much water or paint you need on your palette ready to do a shape. So practicing something like that can be very helpful and beneficial in doing a watercolor. And if you have questions, please comment below, and if you'd like to see more in this series, please like and subscribe, and I will continue to post tips and tricks and techniques about once a week, and I look forward to hearing from you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!